Welcome to the Border City Kids podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Colin.
We are back, I want to say after a month hiatus, and we're back, and we're going to do this, and we got a big podcast coming up for you tonight.
Here we go. So tonight we're actually going to talk about the top 3 USA-Canada hockey games going on here. I did want to put a little bit of an honorable mention, though, out first. But first we want to talk about the USA-Canada step onto the ice.
Now,
it's not just a hockey game.
I'm going to stop you for 1 second before we go any further.
Okay.
I'm just going to address, so what we have here is the Border City Kids podcast channel, and we have 2 podcasts going on right now. Okay, and I know a lot of you are familiar with the podcast that I've been doing called The Midnight Files, and that's where we're talking about ghostly hauntings. These are real stories. This is going to be a separate podcast from that, and we're going to continue with both at the same time, and we love doing it.
We sure do. So when you talk about USA and Canada, it's not just a game at this point. It's history, it's heartbreak, it's full-out national pride on full display here with every pass, hit, and goal. Here we go with some golden goals to third period comebacks. I mean, to be honest, most games are 1 or 2 goal deficit when we talk about the USA and Canada.
Of course, it's like it couldn't be a blowout, right? It always has to be close just to make the 2 nations kind of go against each other, because if one blows the other one out, it's like, oh, wow, this wasn't as exciting as I was hoping it would be.
It actually seems to be more surprising if it's like more than 3 goal deficit, right?
Yes.
So today we're going to break down the top 3 USA-Canada hockey games since the 1990s, the moments that defined generations, shattered expectations, and lit up the hockey world. So we'd like everyone to grab their stick, lace up your skates, and let's hit the ice.
We got number 3 coming at you right now.
So I'm actually going to do a couple honorable mentions quick. So I think this year was huge for Canada-USA hockey here with the Four Nations Cup. I think it was pretty unique because it did occur in Canada and the States at this point, right? This was one of the best rosters that Team USA has had since 1996. It was, I would say this roster matched right up with Canada. I don't think I would say Canada's roster was technically better this year. I think most years Canada's roster on paper maybe had the slight edge.
Yeah, of course.
But this year, I would say USA was 50-50.
Yeah,
I think
they made it close, man. Yeah.
I would say forward group. I think I would take the Canada forward group. But I think defense and goalie, I think USA had the edge, personally.
Yeah, and winning that first game going into the finals, of course. Yeah. And, of course, it had to be the final game that you see these 2 big nations going against each other, and there were some things going on outside of the sports world that were going on too, which I think kind of amped up the intensity of the game itself. So
it certainly made it more interesting. I think if you look at the round robin game, that was one of the biggest games in USA hockey history, because you start out with 3 fights in less than 20 seconds.
Yeah,
you have both Kachchuk brothers going at it. That's legendary in itself for USA hockey.
You got the Rat Kings. We love the Rat Kings. I love the Rat Kings. I don't know about you.
And then you got JT Miller too going at it in the third fight there. So this game was, I think Canada actually was the better team to start out. The first 10 minutes, that McDavid goal was super electric.
Yep.
But after that first period, USA kind of grounded Canada a little bit. They got some quick goals, and I think that Dylan Larkin goal was certainly the game changer.
Yeah, and put the game away. I agree.
I think for the past, we're getting close to 20 years since the 1996 USA Olympic team. That year, that year is spectacular, which we'll get to a little bit later in the podcast here. But as far as you go, I think those 2 Four Nation games that we had there was an honorable mention. Now, I will quickly mention the championship game as well. The gold medal game was that was a game of the lifetime. I also think it was neat because you have the round robin game that was in Canada, in Montreal, one of the biggest crowds you can have in a hockey game in North America, and having USA win that game, and then Canada goes to Boston and they end up winning the championship game there. So I think if you look at fights, you look at skill level on both teams.
And I'm going to say the temperature of Canada and US outside of hockey was building at the time too, and I think that all led up to quite a game that you'll never forget, especially being in a younger generation. Not myself, I'm talking about other people being in such a younger generation, that this will be a game that they never forget because they weren't around for some of the games that we're going to talk about soon.
Yeah, and I think just a last point on that, you have McKinnon, Makar, McDavid on Team Canada, along with obviously Sidney Crosby, which is. But then you know what? I really think Team USA having Hellebuck as their goalie, he's massive.
He's
probably the best goalie in the world right now.
I agree.
And then you also have both Kachchuk brothers. You have Austin Matthews. You have probably the strongest defensive core that the States have had in years.
Yeah, I agree.
So we wanted to first mention those games as our 4 and 5.
Yeah, just being so recent, I think it's definitely important to introduce that game for a bonus on top of the big 3 that we're going to discuss right now.
Yeah, so we're going to get into our number 3 here. We got the 2002 Winter Olympic Game gold medal game, and this was placed in the States in Salt Lake City, February 24th, 2002. Now, the final score was 5-2, but this game was not a 5-2 score, from what it seemed. So this game was dropping with history. Canada hadn't won an actual Olympic gold medal since 1952, which that is quite something.
Yeah.
Think of the history of Canadian hockey.
Exactly.
That's shocking, actually.
And I think the biggest advantage that Team USA actually had going into this game, obviously the Olympics taking place in Salt Lake City, Utah. This is in the USA, so they got home field advantage going in. They got Mike Modano, they got Chris Chelios, they got Brian Leach, John LeClaire, Brett Hall, all huge veteran players, all big names at the time, great hockey players, but also Canada had some talent of their own.
Yeah, no, they had likes of Mario Lemieux, one of the best of all time, Joe Sakic, Steve Yzerman, Jerome McGinley, Martin Brodeur in net. So, I mean, that's
Brodeur,
very stacked both ways.
Brodeur, he was
And quick fact,
goalie.
I actually did meet Martin Brodeur at the Woodstock en route, just to have a little quick fact there. So the turning point, though, was a subtle genius moment in this game. So Lemieux, he actually let a pass go through his legs without touching it, fooling the goalie and setting up Paul Kariya. I mean, Paul Kariya was certainly a legend at that point, and that was for the game-winning goal. Joe Sakic then sealed it with a 4-point game. This one was, honestly, it was more than gold, though, for Canada. It was certainly more of a redemption. It ended a 50-year drought and reasserted Canada's dominance on the world stage.
Something I didn't realize, that Canada was on a 50-year drought. I thought that Canada had run hockey since 1867 when Canada was first a country. So that's new to me, but I'm glad we've checked this out.
Yeah. And the last moment on that, we just want to say Lemieux's non-touch assist actually is considered one of the smartest hockey plays of all time. Yeah. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. And it's funny that when we go back and look at the year 2002, these players that we are mentioning, for me, still feels like they should still be playing, because that's like who I grew up with. So it's like when Steve Yzerman, like I think he's almost probably close to 60 years old now, but it's like he was the player for my Detroit Red Wings team, right? So like just seeing these names is kind of mind-blowing, and this was 23 years ago.
Hard to believe.
Crazy. Yeah.
So next we're going to get to our number 2 moment. This was actually placed in Montreal in 1996, so we're going back a little bit. It was the year after I was born. It was a 3-game series in Montreal at the World Cup of Hockey. Yeah. This was probably USA's first or second best team in the past 25, 30 years.
Yeah, I also have a really random fact that I'm going to add on to this that only someone like me would know. September 14th, 1996, this was the day after Tupac Shakur was killed in Las Vegas.
Interesting.
And at the time, he was obviously the biggest rapper in the world, I'd say. And he was gunned down in Las Vegas and died September 13th. So that's actually crazy that it's the day after.
That is. So this one actually took place in Canada, in Montreal. The final score is actually 5-2 for the USA. It was a winner-take-all Game 3 of the World Cup of Hockey final at the Montreal Forum. And as people like to call it, the Miracle on Ice 2.0, just without the Cold War. So Canada was absolutely stacked. You had Wayne Gretzky, the greatest player of all time. He's surpassed everyone in points. He's up to 2,800 something in points, which may not ever be caught. Joe Sakic, Eric Lindros, Paul Coffey, and of course the famous Cujo in net.
Yeah, big names, man. I love it. That's great.
But I will come to say the USA actually trailed 2-1 heading into the third, and then it just exploded. If you think at the beginning here we mentioned 5-2 for USA, they were down 2-1 going into the third.
Exactly. So they must have really had the coach going at them during that second intermission.
Yeah, they had some goals from Brett Hall, Tony Amonte, Adam Deadmarsh,
wow.
And Darian Hatcher actually, which is a bit of a Sarnia connection to that with the coach of the Sarnia Sting. It certainly overwhelmed the Canadians there in the third period. Mike Richter stood tall with 35 saves. Many were jaw-dropping. They weren't just easy shots from the blue line. Like, he was stopping some pretty amazing, shots.
Which is wild. And then to see that the TV, I guess you would call it the guy who's announcing the game, the commentary host, the United States is shocked Canada on Canadian ice, which
Yep.
at the time was super rare to beat Canadians on their own
on their ice.
Huge
And it was
event.
actually the first time the USA had ever beaten Canada in a best-on-best championship series. I mean, obviously with it being in Montreal, that's even more historic.
Yep.
And it was seen as the official arrival of American hockey as a global powerhouse. Because if you think back, like before that, you have a lot of the Russia and Canada games, Soviet Union games, right? So this kind of was a first marker.
Yeah,
for
the U.S.
USA.
wasn't too dominant in hockey. Yeah, because and even still today, Sweden, you have Finland, all these big names, even Czechia.
Czechia has really
stepped up.
gone up on the global stage.
Yeah.
They're almost number 5, I would say, in the world now.
I feel like a good handful of teams now could win it. Yeah.
Yeah. And number 1, I mean, I think most people listening to this already know what number 1 is. I don't think there's a debate about it.
Yeah, clearly it's the game from the 1972.
So we're actually going to go 2010 Winter Olympic gold medal game in Vancouver.
Shocker.
I mean, this game, there's so many different words to describe this game. But first of it, it's placed in Canada, in Vancouver, in the Olympics. So the biggest global stage you can go off in the Olympics, in Vancouver, British Columbia. The entire tournament had a heavyweight energy, but this final certainly felt like a scripted climax.
Yeah.
Canada was carrying the pressure of winning gold on home soil, while the USA had been the tournament's surprise. They were young, fast, and fearless in that.
Yeah.
At that point, we had Zach Parise tied the game. I remember this. I was watching this game at home in a parent's living room.
Yeah.
When Zach Parise tied that game with 24 seconds left, I thought in my head, this is another Canada-USA, 50-50 match.
Could go either way.
way.
Yeah, and I was actually at Thunder Bay
Where
at
at?
Lakehead University. I was sitting in my room in my dorm, and
Okay.
I just remember, like, who's going to win?
Yeah.
Like, this is intense. You don't see this, but of course, it had to go to overtime. Right?
Of course it
just
does.
had to, right?
Yeah, that kind of is what makes the
rivalry.
Canada USA hockey games.
Yeah. Beauty.
So it sent it to overtime. We were at Rogers Arena, where the Vancouver Canucks play. Then there was just silence. Sidney Crosby was already a generational player at 22 years old. Like, think about that, to where his career is taken off now.
Yeah.
He took a feed, from Jerome McGinley, and it was a one-handed feed, I believe, if I remember correctly. Crosby put it down the line, put it down the boards, and then you can actually, in the actual footage online, you can actually hear Crosby shout for the puck, which is really interesting.
So
he said Iggy. That's when he said, and he put it past Ryan Miller, the goalie of the States, and I mean the crowd just went electric. I know. I was jumping up and down in my living room. I mean, you're half American, half Canadian, so I'm not sure how you were feeling.
I mean, one of my roommates came into my room screaming and yelling at me because I might have been cheering for the other side.
Yep.
Just being the underdog. Sometimes I like the underdog to win. But yeah, I am American and Canadian.
Yep.
But I do remember I was quite angry at the time when my roommate decided to do that. But I held it together.
Yep.
And now that I look back, I have so much respect for Crosby now, being one of the older players. It's kind of like tennis, where you see Djokovic kind of hanging around, and he's still pretty dominant in the tennis game today. So when I look back on this, it's amazing. Like, what a great goal. Couldn't ask for a better finish. You know what? No matter who won that game, congratulations to both teams, because they both really deserved how well they did.
It was. And this is kind of, Crosby had already made a big landmark in the league since 2005.
Yeah.
But this goal instantly became national lore for Canada. He was shown in highlight reels, school gym walls, and even replayed during weddings, even at times, which is quite something.
Yeah.
But for the U.S., it was a gut-punching loss, I would say, for them. But Ryan Miller's performance throughout the tournament elevated him to the national hero stage.
And if I remember right, I don't even think they were supposed to get to the final game.
There was Russia was in there. Sweden was obviously
Finland.
good. Yep.
Yeah, they were a bunch of dominating teams. So when they got there, I was like, oh, sweet. But I actually didn't expect them to actually push Canada to overtime.
Yeah.
So it was a good
to
game.
the brink.
And I'm happy it ended the way it did. And like I said, now that I'm close to the same age as Sidney Crosby, I have
that age gap.
Great respect for Sidney Crosby and what he's done throughout his career. So I can't be mad at him.
And one quick thing just to finish this off too is I think we should put a bit of a shout out to Alex Ovechkin for his,
Yes.
That's super impressive. 895 goals, passing the great and only Wayne Gretzky. I mean, I don't even know if that can be broken. I'm wearing a Matthews jersey right now. I'm a big Leaf fan.
Yeah.
Matthews is obviously, he's up to just about 400 goals in his career. But I don't know, man. Close to 900 goals and passing. He probably still has another year or two left. The 39.
How many goals is he over? Just one right now?
Yeah, he's 890. Well, as far as right now, 895. Yeah.
Okay, so I think the real headline should be
1,000.
Yeah, I think Wayne Gretzky is only behind one goal, so he can still catch him. Let's think about that.
And I think if Alex plays maybe 2 or 3 more years, if he averages 40 to 45 goals in those next 2 full seasons, he could potentially be 1,000, and then I think he calls it a career after that.
Yeah, I think so. I think he wants to hit the 1,000 mark and probably call it a career. I think he's close to being 40 soon, right? So he's getting there. I mean, he certainly looks like it, but him and Crosby, right? They're amazing players.
2 iconic legends.
Yeah. Never be forgotten in the game of hockey.
No.
So we want to thank you for joining us today. We're going to keep these podcasts coming out. I think we're going to be on a regular schedule now. We got 2 podcasts going. Yeah, I'm glad you took control of this because I don't know as much as this guy knows. He's got the jersey on. He's a big Toronto fan. You know what he's in for in a couple weeks, so he's excited for it.
Hey, the Leafs are different this year.
Yeah, you know what? He actually told me the exact same words last year. I got it written down. So Yep.
But we'd like to thank everyone here who viewed the podcast today. I know we had been it's been about a month since we've had one out, but life's busy, and we're at the point here where we think we want to try to get one out weekly.
I think so, and we're gonna get YouTube shorts out. I think we're gonna hit back up on Spotify. We're gonna go on to TikTok. We're gonna keep pushing videos out on both podcasts. We're gonna keep working because we are totally dedicated to doing this, and we enjoy it too, and we like putting stuff out for you guys to watch.
We do. Yep.
So we're gonna see you guys next time. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for joining the Border City Kids.